Hello, 6th graders. Welcome to Big Ideas Math, 7th grade math, section 1.2, Adding Integers lesson. Pause while you write section 1.2 lesson in your math book. Pause again while you write the lesson objective. Find the sum of two or more integers in your math notebook. Today we'll be working on pages 10 and 11 in your textbook. Please follow along while we work through the examples. Let's start at the top of page 10, and the key idea talks about adding integers with the same sign. So when we add integers with the same sign, we add the absolute values of the integers, then use the common sign. So that means use the sign that is with both of them. So that's what we're working on right there. So our example there, and I know it's hard to see here, but our example there is 2 plus 5 equals 7. So we understand that when there's no sign in front of them, that's a positive 2 plus a positive 5, and that equals a positive 7. And then if we have a negative 2 plus a negative 5, that equals a negative 7. So that's what we worked on with our integer counters. That would have been 2 negative counters plus 5 negative counters would equal 7 negative counters. And then let's look at example 1. It says adding integers with the same sign. So we're going to go through these steps again. Find negative 2 plus negative 4. Use a number line to check your answer. So this is always a good idea to use a number line to check your work. So to go through the problem, to do it both ways, if we use the steps where we use absolute value, we would be adding the absolute value of negative 2 and the absolute value of negative 4. So the absolute value of negative 2 is 2. I'm going to write this off to the side over here. And the absolute value of negative 4 is 4, and that equals 6. And then it says use the common sign. So they are both negatives. So we would make that a negative 6. So the sum is negative 6. And then to check that on a number line, we would start at 0 and then go to negative 2. So we would hop 2 to the left and then go 4 more to the left for the negative 4. And that would put us at a negative 6. And then down here it says the meaning of a word. Opposite is when you walk across a street, you are moving to the opposite side of the street. So that's a good reminder of what that meaning is. And then it says two numbers that are the same distance from 0 but on opposite sides of 0 are called opposites. For example, negative 3 and 3 are opposites. And these key ideas are important here. It says adding with different signs, integers with different signs. We subtract the lesser absolute value from the greater absolute value, then use the sign of the integer with the greater absolute value. So we have some examples here. Numbers 8 plus negative 10 equals negative 2. And negative 13 plus 17 equals positive 4. And then looking at the additive inverse property, in words, it says the sum of an integer and its additive inverse, or opposite, is 0. So that sounds really hard, but it just means that when you add 6 plus negative 6, you get 0, and negative 25 plus 25 equals 0. So that's not nearly as hard as it sounds. We're going to make a foldable on all of this, so it's going to get a lot easier in class, so don't worry too much about it. Let's move on the next slide to example 2. let's start on example 2 on the next page. And in example 2, we are adding integers with different signs. And there are a couple of different ways to do this. The way the book shows you, we are going to take the absolute value, and then we are going to use the sign of the integer with the greater absolute value. So I'll show you how this works, and then in class when we do our foldable, I'll show you an easier kind of trick way to do it. So you'll have a couple of different tools under your belt, so you'll have different ways to do it. So what we do here is we take the absolute value of both of the numbers. So our 5 turns into a positive 5, which it was already, and our 10, negative 10, turns into a 10. And 10 is bigger than 5, so we take those and we switch them around and we go 10 minus 5 equals 5, and then we use the sign of the larger absolute value number. The number with the larger absolute value is a better way to say that. So since 10 has the larger absolute value, then we use the sign of the negative 10. So you'll see that 10 is negative, so our 5 comes over here for the answer, and we put a negative sign in front of it. So the sum is negative 5. So let's try that again with the next one. Negative 3 plus 7. We'll put absolute value signs around it, which they did for us here, so I'm not going to rewrite that. But we have a 7 and a 3, because those are the absolute values. So the 7 was already positive, so it stayed positive. The negative 3 was negative, but it became positive when we took the absolute value. We subtract. 7 minus 3 equals 4. And the sign of the number with the largest absolute value is positive. So that was already a positive 7. So we keep the positive sign, so the sum is 4. So then we're going to move on to C. Negative 12 plus 12 equals 0 because of the additive inverse property. So if you think about this one on a number line, if you're at 0 and you go to negative 12 and then you go back positive 12, you end up back at 0. So you subtract 12 and you add 12, so you end up back at 0. So your sum is 0. Example 3, adding more than 2 integers. Now, the book kind of makes this a little bit hard. The easiest way to do it is to simply take 2 at a time. So it says to write the whole sum out, which is fine to do that, but then really you just want to take 2 at a time. So take negative 40 plus 50. So you're going to look at 2 of these at a time, negative 40 plus 50. They have different signs, so you take their absolute value and you say 50 minus 40 equals 10. So that 50 had the larger absolute value and it was positive, so you had $10 after that transaction there. And then you're adding $75, so 10 plus 75 equals 85. So if you come down here, you have $85. It's a 5, not a 3. It's hard to write on this. And then you have 85 minus 50, which you can all do really easily, is $35. So that's just adding and subtracting. So C equals 35. The account balance was increased by $35 in July. Your assignment for this lesson is to complete the On Your Own problems 1 through 7 on pages 10 and 11 of your textbook or your online textbook. They are also shown below. Show your work in your notebook, submit your answers in Google Classroom, and be prepared to share during our next class. Remember, if you're having trouble with these, just hold on, ask me questions in class, or wait until after we do the foldable and then try to do them later. So if you don't understand how to do them completely, that's okay. What I want to see is some effort. So try your best to do them, and then if you're confused, it's okay to wait. Please remember, to earn credit for viewing this flipped lesson, you need to complete your exit slip back at the website. You also need to come to our next class prepared with the journal pages that we did during the flipped lesson or any other work that we did for the flipped lesson completed. You also need to be prepared with any work that was assigned in the flipped lesson completed, and be ready with any questions you have for your teacher, and as always, have a good attitude. We'll see you tomorrow in class. Remember, to earn credit for viewing this flipped lesson, you must complete your exit slip. You must come to our next class prepared with your journal pages or any other work that we did during the flipped lesson completed, and you need to be prepared with any work that was assigned during the flipped lesson completed. Be prepared with any questions you have about the content of the flipped lesson, and a good attitude. We'll see you in class tomorrow.